Hi, it's Professor Olson taking a look at your week 3 work. This is the Friday edition of the critique, discussion critique. All right, starting off with Christian, oyster soap. Let's see, get to your identity package. All right, so this is a good color palette. Your assigned color is this kind of pale color, and you've got some deeper lavender and a little bit of gold. So that's a good setup. You've got your logo is very light colors on a white background. I would consider getting more contrast by having some deeper color maybe behind it, or maybe deepening up the color of your logo. You've got a secondary element, sort of a pattern of bubbles, but this, on the other hand, is kind of too much contrast to go behind type. So I would figure out a pattern that is either in selective areas where it's not interfering with the type, or perhaps a lower contrast pattern. Um, but you've got all the information. Like in this is better like this when it's contained in a certain area. Um, it's hard to tell if that's actually a pattern or whether you just sort of repeated it. Uh, if you don't know how to use patterns, try to use a pattern tool. The design of this is a little awkward because the logo is like way down in the body of the letter. I would make space for the logo at the top of the letterhead so that you have room for the letter without interfering. You could have some of this pattern on one part. Um, Typically, you'd have the return address printed somewhere else on the letter as well. Probably not use all caps for the letter. Uh, this looks good. It's got a sort of seal for the envelope. It's a lot of linear work, a lot of thin lines. Maybe more of a fill for the logo would be better if it was filled with a color. But this is decent progress, and it's looking pretty good. So see if you can fine tune it a bit. All right, Coley, Maritime Soap. Let's get to your identity package. Final logo. There's a color palette. No identity package. So in the instructions, I was pretty clear for you to first create your work, then document your colors. And the reason for that is because you want to experiment with a lot of different colors. You don't want to have to keep documenting the colors over and over again. So once you get it figured out, your designs, then document the colors. This color palette has variations in hue, sort of an analogous. It looks fine in terms of hue, but in terms of value, it could use a little more variation in light and dark. They all seem fairly dark except for this blue, but it's kind of hard to tell how it works because you haven't used it yet. That's really the key, is to use the colors and figure out what works and then document it. All right. Next up, Sarah, for Bermuda tea. You've got a sort of tea stained paper, which I like very much. I think that's kind of interesting. Your type, this is, I guess, your logo type. Let's see, your logo lockup. The icon is kind of big for this configuration. Bermuda should be bigger, and then the logo smaller. And T, you've got what we call a kerning problem. It's way hanging out. You need to close up the space. One thing you could do is just sort of outline these letters in Illustrator and sort of tuck them in. And generally, if you're using a special font for your logo type, I wouldn't use it elsewhere for other things. These illustrations are very pleasant. There's photos, and then you've got this sort of brush artwork. So you need to find the cohesive visual style for the whole thing. You can't go all over the place. So if you like this illustration style, which seems a little more tied into the background, don't use the photo. You got a different logo type here. So you want to figure out your logo, lock it up, make it a file, and then put it everywhere consistently. You could have a horizontal and vertical version, but you definitely don't want to stretch it like you've done here. So there's a lot of good things going on here. You just got to work on the craftsmanship a bit. Graylin, mint soap, and you've got the girl with the mint leaves on her eyes, which is a very pleasant idea. Your skills with Illustrator seem to have failed you here. This figure, this face, needs to be rendered with a little more skill and detail. You know, I would think there'd be a chin. I'm not really sure what, you know, her head seems to be melting into her neck. The hair, I would simplify this so it's not such a complex illustration, more sort of iconic. If you think of like Oil of Olay, like that face, let's just look it up. They have images, the face, trying to find it. It's like a woman washing her face. Uh, it's in that logo, but it's so small you can't see. Oh, LA logo. Let's try that. Yeah, see, very simple rendition of a face. You could keep it that simple, so that you're not struggling there, because I feel like you're struggling a bit with this. And then mint is sort of the brand, soap is the category. You've done it sort of as one word. You've got very complex letters, different sizes. Overall, just simplify the communication. Your color palette is very good. You've got a light green, which is your assigned color. Sorry. Uh, Dark green, a little bit of pale skin color, some pink. This is a good palette. You're not really using the palette effectively. I would use this very light brown as your paper color, perhaps. Your face doesn't have to have a flesh tone necessarily. I think you really got to work that out first. The addition of these bubbles is kind of a fun idea, except they're all kind of distorted. Some are squished, some are stretched. Um, you should have to spend some craftsmanship time sort of figuring out what you want to use and then using it consistently. I like that you've added the bubbles to your presentation template. But yeah, I think that this is a bit of a struggle here. You just need to simplify it. All right. See, when you look at all this, you got a lot of dark green and that one pink, which is very high contrast, complementary palette. I think you want a more cohesive, sort of analogous feeling for this brand because of the type of product it is. So consider that. Brianna, you are working on Sol Beso. This looks pretty good the way you've got it coming together. Your logo, as I mentioned earlier, is too complex and hard to tell what's going on there. I think the word Sol Beso must be much bigger. You went ahead and did it this way because your instincts told you you need it bigger. You know, if your icon was simpler, but you'd have the type bigger and it wouldn't be a problem. The cream color paper is a nice idea. This low contrast sort of watermark type image is very interesting, and that could be used also on the cream color in a slightly darker cream color. The borders, these rules around it aren't really cohesive with anything else. The sun image is okay, but I hate that it's breaking up the type a little bit. And I think that's out of your icon. Black for the back. I don't know. This is sort of a, it looks like a charcoal. I'm hoping that it's not quite straight black, but if you build a palette, you can build a palette any way you want. You don't have to follow this. Um, Find some dark colors that play nice with the light colors and you're close. You're close. All right. Next up, honesty. I like your logo. You've got sort of an implied rabbit in the middle. It feels a bit complex. Um, so you've got a certain style for the rabbit, and this is a different style. The font usage is good. You're working monochromatic essentially. Uh, Maybe you could have a little more fun with color, give some more contrast. The design of these elements is good. They're set up correctly. You've got these bars and a pattern. Um, I think the pattern's good. I just would love to see a little more color. Now, considering that this is sort of caramel food, it's a pretzel, maybe some warm browns and, you know, uh, reds and oranges in addition would help you feel a little more like a tasty food product. All right, Stephen, chunk soap, this looks good. It's coming together. You've got a secondary element of sort of cracked earth, which is great. Uh, Overall, everything looks dark. I would come up with a very light color for your background paper color in some cases, like the envelope and the letterhead. Um, and just a little more value contrast would be helpful here. You've got a lot of detail in your info, so this curved shape feels like out of the blue, like not really connected to anything. Contrast, think about that, especially because it's Chunk Soap, the brand, you think it'd have a little more punch, a little more contrast to it. If you look at like sports team colors, they use a lot of complementary colors, there's a lot of contrast. Think about that. All right, Asia, so Café de Provence. I like where this is going. You've got some good secondary elements. Overall, it's looking good. The circle around the coffee beans feels like an extra piece that's unnecessary. The type could be bigger compared to the icon, and your icon could be sort of freestanding. The key to making that work is to create some good color contrast between your logo and the background. I'm not sure you're going to have that if you just take that away. These additional borders around the edges are not necessary. I like these flower elements are great. This curved border is nice. These curved little corner pieces. Overall, it's looking pretty good. I just think you could finesse the logo a little bit. Café Du is sort of the category, and Provence would be bigger. That's the brand name. All right, that's all we've got for today. I hope you guys are having fun with this, and I look forward to seeing your great work.